In 1947, a line was drawn on the map of British India that led to the largest mass migration in history, displacing over 15 million people and resulting in over 1 million deaths. Families were torn apart, homes abandoned, and a wave of violence that left deep scars which is felt till date.
In August 1947, India gained independence after 200 years of British rule.
As a British barrister draws a line on a map, a once peaceful land implodes.
What followed was one of the largest and bloodiest forced migrations in history.
You obviously would think a move like this would have come after months, if not years of planning, and there would be deep research that would go behind it, right? Well, the reality is the extreme opposite. In fact, no Indian or Pakistani was even involved in deciding the border. The job of dividing the two nations was given to a Britisher who had no idea about the complexity of the Indian subcontinent. He had never even set foot here. This is the story of the Radcliffe Line, the border line that divided British India into three parts: India, West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. The term Pakistan, meaning the land of the pure, was first coined in 1933 in a pamphlet by Cambridge law student Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, who is considered one of the originators of the Pakistan movement, along with philosopher Muhammad Iqbal, who suggested the two-nation theory. They envisioned a separate homeland for Muslims in South Asia. But this idea did not really catch traction until the 1940s, when the tensions between the Hindus and Muslims were rising.
Madness seized a section of humanity which killed, maimed and burnt.
This was the leading cause to the idea that the region should be divided into two states based on religion. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who is known to be the guy that spearheaded this campaign, initially wanted Hindus and Muslims to be together, which led to him being described as the best ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. But by the 1940s, a disillusioned Jinnah also came to believe that Indian Muslims should have their own state to avoid becoming marginalized in their own independent India. As the British prepared to leave after nearly 200 years of rule, they were highly pressured to resolve the communal tensions. The British government, eager to exit quickly, decided that the solution was partition.
As the new dominions of Pakistan and India take over their own affairs, communal hatred flares up in the Punjab. Fleeing from their looted, blood-stained towns comes a new exodus, 1 million displaced persons. Independence has not yet brought them peace.
This is when a crucial question had to be answered. Who would draw the new borders? In a surprising move, Cyrill Radcliffe, a British lawyer with no experience in India, was chosen to draw this line. This decision was confusing given the gravity of the task at hand. Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, was appointed to oversee this transition. He even moved the independence date from June 1948 to August 1947, which made the process even more difficult because of the extremely tight deadlines. Radcliffe then arrived in India in July 1947 with only 5 weeks to make the boundary. But I'm sure what you're thinking. Why was no Indian leader involved in this process? Well, even though the British have not really said anything, there were 3 likely reasons for it. First was that the partition process was rushed and hastily executed, with Cyril Radcliffe having only 5 weeks to complete the task. This tight timeline likely stopped them from taking any meaningful consultation from Indian leaders. Second, the partition was ultimately a decision made by the British government to grant independence to India and Pakistan as separate nations. As the departing colonial power, the British likely wanted to maintain control over the process rather than to give it to Indian leaders. And finally, there was a deep mistrust and animosity between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, the two main political parties representing Hindus and Muslims respectively. Involving leaders from both sides may have made the boundary demarcation even more challenging. Anyway, coming back. After coming to India on 8th July 1947, Radcliffe almost immediately began work. He sat at the Viceroy's Lodge in Shimla, a hill station that the Gora Sahibs preferred to the very hot Indian summers. He had to use outdated census records and maps because the British could not get a fresh survey done in the June heat. There was an absence of experts and advisors, with some suggesting this was a deliberate attempt to avoid delay, as Britain's Labour government, then deep in wartime debt because of World War II, simply couldn't afford to hold on to its increasingly unstable empire.
Behind the scenes, Britain had been battered in the Second World War and no longer had the resources to continue its control over India.
To avoid disputes and delays, the division was done in secret. Radcliffe submitted the partition map on 9th August, which was passed on 12th August but declared with details only on 17th August, a good 2 days after Independence Day. The announcement of the Radcliffe Line sparked a lot of violence and panic. Millions began fleeing from areas believing they were on the wrong side of the new border. Refugee camps were filled with people who had lost everything, and both India and Pakistan struggled to maintain order. One of the best depictions of this turmoil is shown through the story of the legendary Indian athlete Milkha Singh in Bhag Milkha Bhag. Communal violence erupted, with communities being displaced and millions of lives lost. The violence was brutal and bodies were left to rot on the roadside. The newly formed government of India and Pakistan tried to cope with the scale of the crisis, but hardly succeeded. Radcliffe also ran away to Britain, where he refused the salary he was promised for his work because of the devastation he had caused. In a 1976 interview with journalist Kuldeep Nair, Radcliffe expressed regret over the violence that followed the partition. He admitted that the tight timeline and lack of resources had severely restricted him. The journalist asked him why he had decided to give a Sikh-dominated city of Lahore, that was considered Sikhism's capital, to Pakistan. Radcliffe had a shocking answer. He said that he had nearly given Lahore to India, but then realized that Pakistan would not have any large city. Radcliffe justified the division, saying that no matter what he did, people would suffer. An outsider who arrived in a great nation for the first time, which had been oppressed since the last 200 years, changed the fate of millions within his few week-long stay, and then went back to his country, never to return again.
India is trying to hold down by force what she managed to grab by fraud.
The present hostilities originated with large-scale infiltrations of armed personnel from Pakistan.
If they have any idea of taking a chunk of my territory in East Pakistan, this will mean war.
The question I want you to think about is, how different would India, Pakistan and Bangladesh be today if the division was done with accurate data and analysis?